All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to this interesting webinar, and we'll see what interesting really means in just a few moments. So welcome to basically a hotel room in the south of Poland, where we've gathered with the entire team to discuss what's cooking in the kitchen. Unfortunately, the hotel kitchen is off limits for us, so we are stuck to this hotel room. We did not bring all of our equipment. We could have maybe in hindsight, but I hope that the audio and video are reasonable. And if not, well, we can hear ourselves just fine over here. So you should have been here. So we have a lot of things to discuss today. Of course, there's lots of things cooking in the pots in the kitchen of AxonIQ. But before we look at the upcoming meals, let me briefly introduce my two friends here who are here to talk about our recipes.
Yeah, so I'm chef, no, I'm joking. Software engineer. The name is Milan Savic. Some of you may know me, some may not. I've been here almost as long as these two guys. I missed only a few months when the company started. And mostly I'm focused on Axon Server while working a little bit on the framework and some other products. So that's me in short.
Hi, I'm Chef Steven, Steven van Beelen, if you want to do it in the Dutch fashion. Yeah, I've been with AxonIQ since the beginning, working on with framework for God knows how long, and enjoying it still. So.
Yeah, and I'm Allard. I'm your host today, but also the CTO and founder of AxonIQ, and nobody really knows what I do, so I'll just keep it that way and let them do the talking about what's going on. So if we look back, well, there's been a few releases, but I think the most recent one was Axon Server 2025.0. And can you briefly talk us through what's new in there?
So what we baked into Axon Server 2025.0 is integration of signups. So some of you may know that we have a product called signups, and this was a separate deployable. This offered practically a little bit simplified HTTP and RSocket APIs for clients that are not mainly from Axon Framework world, because we wanted to open up the usage of the server. And this was separate deployable. So clients had to deploy two different things, so Axon Server and the signups, and we decided to merge those two products into one. So currently Axon Server also exposes the functionalities, the APIs that signups has been for quite some time now. So this is, I believe, the main highlight of this release.
Which is quite a thing, right? Because now it's fairly easy to just connect let's say a randomly Python application that does an event processing for maybe machine learning related stuff, and it's fairly easy to connect that.
Correct. And I want to highlight this is not part of this release, but to easy up the integration with other platforms, we also have persistent streams that can be used in this manner. So integrating with other environments is now a little bit easier than it used to be before.
That's cool. So even though we don't need a framework to do all this beautiful stuff anymore, there has been a framework release as well. Milestone 1.
Yes.
That sounds very exciting, but usually milestones are things you find on a road that leads somewhere. But before we talk about where it leads, can you walk us through that first milestone?
Sure, I can. Yeah, I'm very happy that we reached that first milestone. First and foremost, actually, it's been a long journey it's been a long walk to reach this milestone. But yeah, it's been a great endeavor so far. It's a nice piece of usable software already, I think. So the major points we did in that milestone are something we're calling the async native API, which for the users of framework is not something that you necessarily touch. It's like we've changed the engine under the hood. We're making all the integrations, and it makes things more performant and more efficient and easier to integrate as well with other libraries if we want to. For the more technical versed people with Framework, it's a change in the work, and it's a new form how we're responding to message handling, which is a message stream, which we're pushing throughout the framework, all that stuff. Next to that, we've expanded our test fixtures. They are now based on the configuration of an Axon application, so that it becomes a bit easier to well, not needing to duplicate the logic of how you've registered your application. Furthermore, it opens it up that it's no longer aggregate or Saga focused, which was the case with the test fixtures from your. Right now we can, well, expand that if we want to. So I think that's a nice addition to it. So something like projection testing, which I've been asked for very frequently, it's not something we can do. So I think that makes me very happy.
So if I summarize that, then the test fixtures are essentially a simplified version of your application, just quick up and running, right, without necessarily all of the infrastructure, but whatever you need, and a easy way to inject well, historic events, commands, and queries in there.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And that's powerful. We did something that we called stateful command handlers, which, well, essentially is just a command handler where we inject a state object. So that's a bit of a switch from as well what we did in Framework 4, where you typically had an aggregate with your command handlers in it. Now you have your command handler and you inject your aggregate in it. You might think, why do this?
Yeah, right? I was thinking that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It makes it a lot easier to do vertical slice-based development, we think, which aligns very nicely with event modeling. So I think that's a nice stepping stone there.
Yeah, and of course, while we're talking about aggregates, we very quickly come to a rather, well, let's say it's a topic full of debates, right? There's lots of, well, there's a couple of posts of ours that have become a sort of a home, how do you call it, a get-together center or something for people arguing about all sorts of stuff, which is quite interesting. But before we go there, by the way, you might have questions that I don't know of, so I'm going to do my best to relay all sorts of, ask them a lot of things to make sure we relay all the information. But if you're watching this live, you can actually use the Q&A tab to ask us questions. If you're watching the recording, that won't work, but you can use the comments to ask questions, and we'll at some point probably comment back. But if you have any questions, use the Q&A panel to ask us. We have a very large screen here where we can see those questions popping up, and we'll make sure to answer them, and just in case they're not part of the program that we already envisioned. But back to the aggregates, it's dying, I guess.
It is.
I mean, one of the ways is stateful command handlers, but yeah, DCB is the big word, right? What's the status of DCB right now in relation to Milestone 1?
Yeah. So what we did for Milestone 1 is we took all the discussions that were had, not just within the framework team, but also in the server team, and with essentially the majority of all the engineers at AxonIQ, what that API should look like, how you would be appending events from a DCB standpoint, how you would be sourcing events, and how you would be streaming events. We took that API discussion, that format, put it into Axon Framework, and then we made what the event store should look like using that API, and used it in our aggregate or entity repository. In Milestone 1, you can use either in memory variant of this, that works with the idea of DCB, that you have your event criteria and your tags attached to those events. And we also have access to the aggregate-based approach still. So as a form of a migration as well, if you're coming from a relational database space, or if you're using an old version of Axon Server, that also connects with still that same API. So that in Framework, we can stick to, now we have conditions, but yeah, for people's actual store that can be moved over.
So there's been well, lots of debate on what we need what we need in DCB to make it work. We've seen at our conference, we did a small proof of concept, and we noticed that there's quite a bit of complexity in terms of building the tags and keeping track of consistency marker. How has that evolved since then, and how does the framework keep it easy?
Yeah,
if you will.
The one thing in Framework 5 Milestone 1 that you need to do right now is define what your criteria are when sourcing. So when you're sourcing a model, you need to state, okay, these are the tags I require, which you could argue reflect back to what we used to have are the aggregate identifiers. By sourcing a model based on that, we automatically know, oh, you will likely start appending events for these tags. So we can make the condition that is used for the appending. Furthermore, when you source from an event store based on a set of criteria, the last message you always get is a consistency marker. That is something we have internally. That's not necessarily automatically shared because it's not necessary. We can make that event condition for the user. So on the integration level of Axon Framework, you could almost argue not that much changes. People will still be able to append events in the sourcing model. Yeah.
Great. So that complexity remains hidden for users unless they want to, well, open the
engine.
Open up the engine and have a look inside, and be careful to not touch anything that moves or is hot.
And also for some more complex cases, right, where we cannot envision how to form a condition, then it is open to be extended.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the event criteria, as they are called, with essentially the set of tags and the order flow in that, you can define that yourself for your entity if you want to, if you need to.
All right. But you said it's either in memory or as aggregate based, right? What about DCB and server? And I know this is a big topic. It's I've of course I participated in a lot of the discussions, and it's not an easy beast to tackle. But how are you doing so far?
Correct. Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of work, a lot of testing to support actually DCB. This required quite some changes in how we store stuff, how we index stuff. So basically, right now we are almost close to the release of the very first preview of DCB supporting Axon Server. So essentially, what Steven was mentioning, the Axon Server Event Store API is now supporting these operations. So basically, when you connect Axon Framework to Axon Server, you will be able to append events based on the condition. This condition is based on certain tags, and Axon Server is going to validate whether that append is valid or not, reject or accept. And you can even source your model based on those tags. Furthermore, we are also building a streaming API that is also filter based. So you can filter those events based on the tags that you provide. So you can build your view models a little bit faster than it used to be.
So basically, you only stream the events that you care about in your projection, or you could build an ad hoc projection even and say, hey, stream me everything with these tags because I want to build a projection for just this, and keep it alive, or keep streaming live.
Correct. Essentially, those two operations are pretty similar. The only difference is when you source, you want to know when is the end, and you want to get that consistency marker at that point, which is a little bit of internals that framework needs to know about, but yeah, it doesn't need to leak otherwise. So yeah, we are testing this, and we are comparing with the current event store that Axon Server has. So we definitely don't want to be slower than that. And so far, in our testing environments, this looks promising. So
I want to emphasize a little bit because in one of my recent posts about, I mean, it's always nice to talk about killing an aggregate because it's a little bit controversial, right? Because a lot of people love aggregates for the right reasons and some love them for the wrong reasons. But there were some comments and some proof of concepts where the performance was quite abominable. Right? I mean, nothing you would ever trust to a performance or to a production environment, right? Those levels. But you just said that you don't want it to be slower. Of course, you don't want to, but is it slower?
Yeah, essentially, I mean, the fair comparison would be if you compare now the tag approach with the aggregate approach, it would be basically having a single, let's say, a single stream with one tag, right? So in those comparisons, it is not slower, it is even faster in certain cases. Then we extend it, adding more and more tags, and for some, let's say, reasonable use cases, it is still pretty comparable. As I said, in certain cases, even faster.
Yeah. All right. So there's no significant slowdown if you use these tags, and in some cases there's even a speed up.
Exactly. And I mean, when you said there is no slowdown, there is no slowdown at all. So it's let's say up to par with the current.
Okay, that's very interesting. So the whole argument of it will be slower is basically
I guess, I mean, that there could be some implementations out there that are not, let's say, considering certain cases that we had in mind that might not perform well. But
okay. Hey, and when can people play around with DCB in its full glory?
So Steven is planning to do a release of.
I see how you make each other's promises, so you don't have to keep your promise, right? That's smart.
Steven was mentioning end of June that he wants his tests to be green. Yes. So end of June -1 is going to be the release of Axon Server preview of DCB support. And of course, there are things such as retagging. So when you want to change tags for your events, which is pretty important for production environments, because sometimes it is easy to forget to tag or you want to remove a tag. So this is something that is not going to be part of the first release. And we say that, I mean, it is a preview release. It is not production ready. In those terms of I don't know, we are still not doing any authorization on request. We are not doing any auditing on the request. So it is going to be a release for people to try it out, to see whether there are benefits, and also for us to gather feedback. So for anyone who is listening and wants to play, just play with it and tell us what do you think about it.
So you've got your summer cut out for you if you're watching this. We are expecting you to spend time this summer to explore DCB.
Please do.
So that's when we get framework Milestone 2
exactly.
Framework. Anything else you want to elaborate on Milestone 2?
Well, yeah, again, want to cement end of June for Milestone 2. It will contain the connector to Axon Server with DCB support, as was just pointed out. We've already built that right now. Quite pleased actually with how it works, and setting it up was very nice. So yeah, we'll also have the command bus with Axon Server. This needs to happen because of that async native API I pointed out. So we changed our unit of work, and we have now a message stream. That concept needs to be propagated throughout. So we also propagate that through all the event processing side of things in this milestone. So that means you can also do the event processing side of your application with that new improved background. Users will not notice a lot of change there. So a lot of the APIs will stay the same when it comes to what the event processor looks like. I do expect some changes in the configuration because we weren't overly happy with the configuration API, but those should be very easy to migrate over to. This will also be paired with furthering that stateful message handler approach, but then also for events. So again, to make it easier to do those vertical slices you have from event modeling, but then also on the event handling side of things. Yeah, those are the main points. Yeah.
Great. And if we look forward a little bit, right? There's I always joke to people that there's only one deadline that we really care about, which is our conference, right? We want to be able to have people play around with our concepts. So what do we expect by then to have for people to play with on the framework side?
So after milestone 2, we will still do a milestone 3, because for the keen listener, I didn't talk about queries yet. So that's what we want to do for milestone 3. Also want to have snapshotting in there. We need to align with like what Axon Server is doing there, which is why that's going to milestone 3. And then want to think about monitoring and tracing kind of things. But more importantly, somewhere before the conference, we will also do a release candidate 5.0. So something that, well, should be usable if you want to. Yeah, in production. I mean,
all right. So we have a comment from David regarding DCB. It seems you're moving towards a decider pattern to decide from what is it, a command and state to a flow of events. Did you consider having the command handler return the events to avoid any I/O in the handler with the event depender?
Yeah, we did, David. Yes, this is still a debate we're having. You might have seen, if you're talking about the event depender, that is the replacement of the old aggregate lifecycle static solution we had. So an event depender is now injected, but I think we should be able to have dedicated return flow as well. So yeah, we want to go that route as well, David. I don't think we are stuck with our current solution to the API to support this. Not sure if we're going to do this in milestone 2 or 3, because I don't think we are stuck to start supporting this. Good job.
And I would also like to emphasize from my side, it's you cannot really avoid I/O altogether. Even if the command handler returns the events, they still need to be stored, and you still want to be able to acknowledge a command with the knowledge that they will be taken into account even after a restart, right? You do expect some level of persistence. So there's still, I mean, it doesn't remove the necessity for AI, but I/O, sorry, for I/O, and but yeah, it makes APIs a little bit more functional, and this is definitely something that we've been talking about in framework to support different paradigms, right? We want different levels of API, if you will, where if somebody really loves annotation and just the Axon 4 approach full of annotations, then great, go for that. If you like a more functional approach, go for that. Declare your functions instead. And if we find out there's another API that works, then hopefully we can match that in as well. Yeah. All right. So we'll get a release candidate before the conference. What about the stable DCB version?
So the plan is to be in the release after 2025.1.0, which is 2025.2.0. This is something that we plan for the end of the year. So this will include, as I said, retagging. Steven also mentioned snapshotting. We need to support migration from the earlier versions of Axon Server to the new one. One detail is that basically the format on disk didn't change, so this will not be a heavy migration in terms of rewriting events. That format stays the same, and it will be easier. So yeah, we plan for the end of the year, but yeah, you know how developers are with planning. So.
Yeah. I do know that the end of the year will remain the end of the year.
Yeah.
So that part is fixed, but yeah. Well, it would be nice to have a 2025 release in 2025.
Correct.
So I do expect a few people over there to expect the end of this year.
Yeah.
All right. Understood. All right. If there are more questions, oh, there we go. You ask for it, you get them. Removing external dependencies from aggregates is a good news. Yeah, that's one of the things we really want to do. So I think also the stateful command handler already makes it a bit more possible, more explicit to say, well, it's just a command handler, and maybe I do have some external information I need to get that I can't get from the command. We typically recommend putting it in the command before you send it, but if you can't, you don't have to lock an entire model or, well, first of all, DCB works less with pessimistic locking. There's more optimistic locking, and with the async APIs, it should become more natural, natural anyway.
Can I add something there?
Of course.
Because one of the other things from Milestone 2, and I didn't necessarily shine light upon that, but I think Victor's question is also about that a bit. With the second milestone, you could still make the old aggregate solution, but without any annotations if you'd want to. So you could make your aggregates or your entities, your models, framework agnostic, which I think is also a rather huge thing, especially if you come from the, well, thinking about the domain-driven design purist, I should say, which nothing wrong with that, of course. You'd want that. You want to be able to move your model from one place to another without you having anything specific on the library in there. And that is one of the bigger changes we're also doing. It's just so technical that glanced over it a bit. But
right, great. We'll wait just a few seconds to see if there's other questions. Usually it takes a few seconds to type them here. But in the meantime, we have been talking about the conference and when it is. We will be giving away more information of what we will be talking about at the conference, but of course DCB and its release is one of the bigger topics that we're working towards. If you're interested in well, giving them face-to-face feedback, you are very welcome to come to Amsterdam and shout to them directly, which is on October 1st and 2nd. As I said, in Amsterdam, we have not locked in on a specific venue yet. There's still a few venues that we're trying to have each other fight each other for the best. The best overall experience. That's what we're going for. Those that have been at AxonIQ conferences know that we like venues with a special touch to them, and just a bit of historic awareness as well. So that's we'll make sure we get the best, but also the content, we're going to make it special. If you're interested, just visit the website axoniq.io. There's lots of information about the conference there. With that, I think there's one question, which is thank you. So let's thank you back. Any last things you would like to throw in before we start waving goodbye?
No, I think that we covered, at least I covered most important stuff from the server.
If seeing David's comment just now, I'm pretty sure he looked at what the first milestone is. The milestone is there with a reason. If somebody wants to play around with it, your feedback is very much appreciated. We got a space for that on our forum that you can write a post, if you will, because that will help us shape it to hear those thoughts.
Okay. Well, that was just long enough for somebody to type their question. Sorry, we'll cut this out. Will there be any courses related to DCB in the academy?
Yes.
Yes. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, obviously,
for sure.
Unfortunately, we need to implement it first before we know exactly what it will look like, and therefore what the course should contain. But
I am already having the discussions on how we're going to shape Academy and what format is coming in there. So
absolutely. All right. And we got a comment from Bastian that he's happy to hear that we managed to keep performance. It has not been easy, and I know what these guys are doing under the hood. Sometimes I wonder, know how where we get where they get the ideas from to find these little performance optimizations. I won't compare ourselves to a Formula One team yet, but we are looking at every little detail that we can, which is interesting, and I'm pretty convinced that we can squeeze more out of it in the future. But yeah, so far it looks pretty good. All right, well, thanks for watching. If you made it all the way here, and we'll hope to see you next time. Well, perhaps live live in Amsterdam, and if not, hope to see you online in one of our discussion with lots of feedback about Milestone 1. So with that, thank you, and have a great day.
I do see another question that I do want to cover.
Last minute.
Yeah,
All right.
if you don't
If you haven't closed the lid of your laptop, this is Appendix A.
Yeah. Victor, specifically for you, we already wrote to getting started for Milestone
Maybe
1.
repeat the question. So do you have any examples of working without aggregates? Is that effort related to vertical slices?
Yes. My apologies. You're entirely right. Yes, we do. We have already drafted the getting started for Framework 5, now based on Milestone 1. We will keep updating that for every milestone so that the getting started is expanded, and that getting started takes you through the journey of having an event modeling session and selecting the slices and then implementing those separately.
So I hope that answers the question. All right. Well, then again, thank you, and see you next time. If you have any further questions, you can leave them as comments when we publish the video on YouTube. All right. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.